isn't about a lie or a conspiracy or a deceit or a deception. It's a decision.
The conclusions of the intelligence community that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, was trying to acquire more, turned out to be mistaken, and that was an honest mistake.
The pressure for clarity, for making certain what was not certain, came from number 10.
It was, one British ambassador said privately at the time, the worst foreign policy mistake since the Suez Crisis over 40 years earlier.
I believe we did the right thing. I stand 100% by it. And I think that our intelligence services gave us the correct intelligence and information at the time.
The toppling of an evil dictator, yes, but also the unleashing of chaos on the basis of intelligence, which turned out to be false.
These are not assertions. What we're giving you are facts and conclusions based on solid intelligence.
It is extensive, detailed, and authoritative.
Inside MI6 headquarters, Iraq still causes our spies embarrassment and shame. They admit that not since Kim Philby defected to Moscow in the 1960s has the service's reputation been dealt such a blow. And this question should be answered by the Chilcot inquiry this week. Should MI6 be blamed solely for making mistakes, or also for succumbing to political pressure from Tony Blair's number 10? It was in September 2002 that Tony Blair gave the House of Commons his dossier on Saddam Hussein's alleged weapons of mass destruction.
It concludes that Iraq has chemical and biological weapons, that Saddam has continued to produce them, that he has existing and active military plans for the use of chemical and biological weapons, which could be activated within 45 minutes.
It was based on what's known as a joint intelligence assessment from March that year. This said intelligence on Iraq's weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missile programs is sporadic and patchy. Though not for the first time, this major caveat or warning never made it into the Prime Minister's speech. One former senior Whitehall official said to me he recalled being told that 10 Downing Street was still not happy with the drafting of the Iraq dossier because it wasn't tough enough.
Iraq did not have significant, if any,
Lord Butler was appointed by Mr Blair to report back on that dossier's mistakes. He concluded that the Prime Minister had not deliberately lied, but misled himself.
What I've always said about Tony Blair is that when he said he believed, without doubt, that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, that's what he said in the foreword to the dossier, that was true. He did believe it. And he wasn't, in that respect, lying.
But there were caveats on that intelligence.
There were, that's correct. And in my view, and I said this in my report, it was a serious mistake that those caveats were not included in the dossier.
But British spies and diplomats are still angry that their warnings were stripped away. Khan Ross, an Iraq expert at the Foreign Office, resigned after accusing ministers and officials of lying in the run-up to war.
We had lots of doubts. We had lots of questions about so-called residual stocks, about what had happened to the WMD that Iraq had undoubtedly possessed. But we had no positive evidence of existing stocks of WMD whatsoever.
Less than a teaspoon of dry anthrax.
Colin Powell, the US Secretary of State, talked of Iraqi biological weapons labs in his briefing to the UN Security Council just before the invasion. It later emerged that his source had made the whole thing up. But British soldiers certainly believed Saddam had WMD. And the then Chief of the General Staff says this pre-invasion preparation shows the government really believed it too. Do you personally feel misled?
No, I don't believe I was misled. I'm not certainly going to say that this intelligence was fabricated, just made up. It may have been, how to put it, marketed rather hard for the political purpose. That I can see. But I don't feel I was misled in the sense of being told lies, no.
We were aware of vibrations from number 10 and the way that government works, that from the top we were getting this pressure to make the claims in the dossier and other public presentations much more certain than we ourselves had long believed.
Yet no individuals have suffered any penalty for mistakes made. The Chilcot inquiry is expected to criticise Sir Richard Dearlove, then head of MI6, and his successor Sir John Scarlett, though both men deny failing to stand up to Tony Blair's demands for a clear case for war.
I'm struck by the sort of imperviousness of the political and intelligence establishment to falling on their swords in this whole episode.
I think people need to fall on their swords if they have been incompetent or dishonest. And I don't think the mistakes that certainly my review found amounted to incompetence, negligence or dishonesty.
My worry is that many of the witnesses to Chilcot had an inherent interest in bending that truth, in pretending that they were misled, in presenting themselves as not guilty, as not culpable in a process of deliberately misleading the public to support an illegal war.
The Iraq War cost 179 British servicemen's lives.
Their sacrifice and commitment will never be forgotten.
Perhaps 150,000 Iraqis died up till British forces pulled out 7 years ago, and they are still dying. The war cost at least £10 billion, and today's chaos in neighbouring Syria has its origins here. Yet Mr. Blair has always believed in the rightness of his cause.
It was better to deal with this threat, to deal with it, to remove him from office, and I do genuinely believe that the world is safer as a result.
I think the jury is still out as to was it worth it. It's very hard to answer that question to a mother who's lost a son or a chap without legs. It's very hard to answer that question.
Do you lie in bed yourself and think to yourself, was it worth it?
I have had that question in my mind from time to time, yes.